I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to our ongoing Operation Freedom Briefing and Dave versus the MSM combined series. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for networking this information to all those you know and love. And thank you for putting pressure on these individuals that hold government offices at the federal, state, and local level, holding their feet to the fire because of the facts and truth and data and the information that you're gleaning from this platform and from other independent media platforms. You see, the key is keeping the pressure on, probably not fair to vermin to say this, but to the vermin that hold political office. And they are vermin. They're there to push their own self-interests, not the interests of you and anyone in your voting district. That's the unfortunate truth. No matter what country you live in, that's the truth. But holding their feet to the fire, of letting them know that you know what's particularly going on, is critical. Many people say, well, that they don't listen. No, they do. Trust me. I've had my hip boots on, waders on in the swamp, dealing with the vermin there for 37 years, from when I first was brought to Washington to work as advisor and a consultant on healthcare policy for Ronald Reagan. And the swamp has gotten deeper, and it's frankly gotten a bit uglier and a bit more brazen in their criminal activities. And they believe that they are the untouchables. And that's the premise of today's show, the foundation of today's show. The untouchables. They believe that the laws that are used as clubs in many respects against you and me and everyone we know that aren't part of this are in the 99.9% club and not part of the big club. You know, that 0.1%. I'm not sure how much longer they're going to be untouchable. And the reason is because the people, because of your efforts, are waking up. Because you took this information that focuses on their criminal activity, and we've done a tremendous amount of that on this platform with my radio show for the past 15 years. And you haven't sat idly by. And that's helped our constitutional republic and the world to a significant degree. You know, let's go back to Frank Herbert, the author, who addressed governments. And here's what he said, quote, "All governments suffer a recurring problem. Power attracts pathological personalities. It's not that power corrupts, but that it is magnetic to the corruptible," end quote. Yeah, right on target. And when you combine the corruptible with a system that is two-tiered, no-tiered for the untouchables, or as they see themselves, and a club to beat on the rest of us into submission. Over 100 years ago now, in 1924, the Lord Chief Justice of England, Lord Gordon Hewart, famously declared, quote, "Justice should not only be done, but should be manifestly and undoubtedly be seen to be done." The Lord Chief Justice of England believed that even a small attention to possible bias by a county clerk meant justice was not seen to be done and thus was not done. And that brings me to the Epstein Maxwell Intelligence Agency operation that had been in play and still is to this day in one shape or form or another. Remember, it was just not just one trafficking operation that was truly a crime against humanity, and in particular children. People don't want to talk about this, but we do. We get demonized. I can tell you I get targeted. I get threatened for talking about this. And the reason is because I'm over the target. And I'm not backing off. Because whether it was in my medical career focusing on prevention, in particular the prevention of children's injuries, or the prevention of children being abused and trafficked, I won't stop. And I believe you won't stop either. Because the children are our future, right? And that's exactly why they're being attacked by the syndicate. The syndicate composed of psychopaths. Emerald Robinson, a former White House correspondent for Newsmax, said the following. Remember now, I've told you this for many years, got a lot of heat, but now some people are starting to realize what I've been telling people for 15 years on the radio is accurate. Epstein was the front. He's the fall guy in case things went south. The real brains of the outfit, it was just his little assistant, Ghislaine Maxwell. No, she's the brains of the outfit. She was running the operation on behalf of the intelligence agencies, and 3 in particular. One based in the UK, one based in that small Mediterranean country, and one based right here in the good old US of A. Yeah. It was an intelligence control operation used for blackmail so they could push their globalist agenda. Because remember, all of these intelligence agencies are tentacles of the top part of the octopus. The top part of the octopus being the banking families, the banksters. Now, I'm going to give you their names yet again for the God knows how many 100th time. And one is because it reinforces who the true perpetrators of these crimes against humanity are. But also, it really upsets them. How do I know that? Because, well, the blowback I get every time I mention the head of the octopus, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Lazards, the Pinkuses, the Loebs, the Seifs, the Warburgs, and at the very top, the Payseur, Payseur family. But Epstein was the front. Here's what Emerald Robinson said. Epstein was running a pedophile ring for the intelligence agencies, the 3 that I outlined, I alluded to gather blackmail on American elites, if you want to call them that, and the FBI and CIA must have allowed it since Epstein lived in the United States. Bottom line is, those agencies and this operation allowed American children and children of the world to be raped for blackmail. And that's why the United States government wants you to stop talking about it. She's right. And it brings me to an article, a great article, written by John and Nisha Whitehead, that do great work through the Rutherford Institute. The article is entitled The Untouchables, the Sexual Predators Within America's Power Elite, a power scum, let's call them. You see, the Epstein case was never just about Epstein. It was about the entire edifice of power that shields the ruling class, silences victims, and erases accountability. Thus, the latest about-face declaration from the Trump administration that Epstein had no client list, that he did in fact kill himself, and that there's nothing more to discuss or investigate, so we shall just move on, have only reinforced what many have suspected all along. The system's rigged in order to protect the power elite, because the power elite are the system. The message from the top is clear. There's not going to be any accountability. President Trump recently flatly refused to appoint a special prosecutor. His allies in Congress have gone silent. And the same politicians who demand that the harshest punishments for undocumented illegals, protesters, or whistleblowers have nothing to say about the systematic abuse of children by men and women in their own orbit. This isn't justice. It's a double standard. One set of rules for the untouchable scum, and another for you and me and everyone else. If it looks like a cover-up, smells like a cover-up, and appears to benefit all the usual suspects, is it so far-fetched to suspect that the government is once again closing ranks to protect the members of its own power elite scum? Each time, secrecy protected the powerful and betrayed the people. And it will keep happening again and again, and here's where we come in. Unless we confront the truth hiding in plain sight, not to remain mute or silent, but to let them know that we know what's going on. That abuse of power is not an aberration of the system, it is the system. The trafficking of children, the shielding of perpetrators, the systemic silencing of victims, this isn't a conspiracy. It's a business model, and has been for many decades. This is America's seedy underbelly. Unless something changes in the way we deal with these ongoing egregious abuses of power, the predators of the police state will continue to wreak havoc of our freedoms, our children's, our lives, and our communities. For too long now, Americans have tolerated an oligarchy in which a powerful elite group of wealthy donors is calling the shots, and we need to restore the rule of law for all people, no exceptions. The rule of law means no one gets a free pass, no matter their wealth, status, or political connections. Many people believe, well, there's really nothing we can do about this. Yes, there is. I can tell you this for fact. There are two things that scare a politician at the federal level, the state level, and the local level. Two. One, not having enough money to run for re-election so they can sit in their big fat leather chair for the next God knows how many years. And the second is when we, their supposed constituents, are wise to an issue that they're either on the wrong side of or they're doing nothing about. Because they know no matter how much dirty money they get and how much elections are thrown, when we're wise to stuff and we start talking amongst ourselves, and then in mass voting against the people that are either on the wrong side of something or not doing something about it, there's not enough lobbying money. There isn't enough shade to be thrown at an election cycle that will get them reelected. And that scares the daylights out of them, and they don't want you to know that. But I just told you that. That's why your efforts at speaking to others about what's really going on and mobilizing them and letting these scum know that you know what's happening and what's not happening. And this all comes down to blackmail. It really does. Or as I learned very early on, Washington, state capitals, are all about, one of the first lessons I learned was all about leverage. Because even starting 37 years ago, I went, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. Why are people doing this when in fact it's contrary to common sense? Dave, it's all about leverage. Yeah. And that's what the Epstein-Maxwell intelligence operation was and is all about. Leverage. Another lesson I learned was that the best blackmail is the blackmail that's not made public, that it keeps simmering behind the curtain to be used at a moment's notice as many times as possible. An article was recently sent to me by someone in the current Trump administration who's very frustrated with what's not happening on the Epstein front. And it was an article that was written in the Israeli Times by an individual by the name of, who's very tight with the Israeli leadership, Yosef Janowski. It was entitled Trump, Israel, and the Epstein Files. Trump and his administration, this little portion of the article, Trump and his administration criticized Netanyahu and Israel. And it just so happens that now the Epstein files are haunting the president. For a long time, the files had subsided in the background. They weren't considered to be much of a threat to Trump and those around him. But all of a sudden, right after President Trump started criticizing Israel and Netanyahu, the files surfaced. And they seemed to be overwhelming those around him and him at times. And now some old files seem to be threatening him and those around him. And here's the critical line in the article. Perhaps President Trump will realize that it really doesn't pay to start up and criticize Israel and its leaders. That was a message being sent. A message that I believe is being reinforced to the president on a very regular basis by several of those around him. The two most suspect people around him, and this doesn't make me any favors when I say this, trust me, is Susie Wiles, his chief of staff. His chief of staff position was a huge problem in the Trump 1.0 administration. Every chief of staff he had did not help President Trump. It was amazing he could get done what he did in the 1.0 administration. On top of the whole Russia collusion hoax and that hoax and this impeachment. It was truly amazing he got anything done because the whole idea was to paralyze him. The chief of staff has huge responsibilities and huge power. The chief of staff has the ability to block information, block people with divergent issues and ideas and information of getting to the president. And that happened in the 1.0 administration and is happening right now. The other person I believe that fills his head with garbage is his Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, who has ties, let's put it, to another country, and also I have under good authority some folks in the intelligence community that are looking to cover their tracks as it relates to this leverage operation, one of which involved Epstein and Maxwell. If we look most recently, and this is not being critical, it's just being factual, and it's important that we put everything on the table because we truly aren't supporters of the America First movement and the MAGA movement if we try to shove this under the rug. A lot of this problem started in May when Bongino and Patel were being interviewed, the FBI director and the assistant director of the FBI, by a softball interview by Maria Bartiromo. And she casually brought up about Epstein and about what happened in Butler. And essentially, and those two look very uneasy during that interview. They actually look like a hostage video. And they both came out with, well, Butler, there was no there. Sorry, not buying that. And two, that when it came to Epstein, well, there's no doubt about it, he killed himself, and there's a videotape that showed it. We haven't released it yet, but it's unequivocal. Really? The guy reportedly died in 2019. We're 6 years down the line, and you've had this video, and nobody... What? You haven't released it? And things kind of settled down. And then on July 6th, an FBI unsigned memo was released that Epstein had no clients and he didn't blackmail anyone and he definitely killed himself and we all need to just move on. It caused a firestorm by all of us who have any type of analytical abilities and are not sycophants and just accept everything that's put in front of us. Anyone who rationally has any analytical ability said, now wait a minute. At a minimum in 2016, 2024, the president campaigned on this, about transparency and accountability for these people, about human trafficking and the like, and their involvement. This guy was arrested under the Trump 1.0 administration for this, for trafficking. His partner in crime, Maxwell, was arrested as well, prosecuted, and is in jail. President Trump, in the early 2000s, threw Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago for hitting on young girls, trying to traffic them. What? What are you kidding? The former Secretary of Labor, when he was asked about when he was a prosecutor in Florida and was going after Epstein, I think in 2008, he said, I was told to back off because this guy is linked to intelligence. This is above my pay grade. It's a hoax. He had no clients. And then, after this was July 6th, on July 7th, they released the video only to find out that 2 minutes and 53 seconds of it was missing. And that there were multiple edits put in it. Not the smoking gun that we were told. And then it was made worse on July 7th at a cabinet meeting where President Trump announced that Americans need to move on and forget about Epstein. Well, we can forget about it. Oh, well, all right, but what about the kids? This is about kids. This is ultimately about kids. Because it's not just Epstein. It's not just Maxwell. There are many trafficking entities that are doing quite well, actually. What do you mean, move on? No. Just in the Biden administration, what are there, 300 and some thousand missing kids yet that were trafficked over the border? We're not going to forget about them. We're not going to move on because it's all part of the same racket. And then on July 12th, he tripled down or quadrupled down at this point and posted that no one cares about Epstein. No, we care. We care about those kids and the perpetrators. And then on July 16th, here we go again, a Truth Social post in Oval Office where he said that Jeffrey Epstein was a hoax. And his past supporters, I guess all of us that supported him for the past 8 years, have bought into this. Well, wait, he campaigned on this for 8 years. He then called all of us that still want to pursue this whole issue of human trafficking and child trafficking and Epstein and Maxwell and the intelligence agencies' involvement. He called all of us, quote, in his words, weaklings, end quote. And he also said he doesn't want our support any longer. And then on August 6th, he came out and he goes, quote, this whole thing with trafficking and Epstein, it's all BS. After that weakling comment that he made, I happened to be at, I was out grocery shopping a day or two after. I think it was the next day. And I'm coming back to my car, and there's a guy next to me. He didn't have a bumper sticker. It was one of these clear vinyl Trump. It had Trump on it. It was on his back window, and he's there scraping it off. And I said to him, what are you doing? He goes, I didn't vote for this. He said, I took a lot of grief for supporting President Trump because I've never voted for somebody with an R after their name in my life. Because I work on the line, and he mentioned the automotive company. Because I would wear my red hat in every day, got a lot of grief. But I supported him because one of the things that he was going to do is bring accountability and transparency to many issues, including the issue of harmed children. He goes, yesterday, he said all of us that want accountability and transparency related to Epstein and whoever that woman is, he said, and whoever else was involved in this and hurt these kids. And he said all of us that still want accountability on it, we're weaklings. He goes, I'm not a weakling. He goes, I went through hell to support this guy. Got grief for months. And now he says I'm a weakling? And I should forget about this? I didn't vote for this. That's why I'm scraping this off. And he wasn't alone. There were millions of people who've been his base that without them, he wouldn't have gotten back in office. Feel the same way. So how do we rectify all this? A guy who was pushing against the Untouchables, all of a sudden saying they're not, just forget about them. No, we're not going to forget about them. So, in putting things together, why? Why not hold the people that have been untouchables? Why should we not hold them accountable? We should. So what happened here? I believe that he got a visit from, let's call them the men in dark suits. And I believe he was presented with the summation of what was in those files. And it could well be that high-level donors, longtime friends, maybe some family members, or people who he considered part of his family that are so close, were involved. So his positions in July and August are essentially based in trying to help out those people. I also believe the men in dark suits probably told him that there are so many people involved in all three branches of the government and in high levels of the private sector that if you pursue this, it will bring the entire country down. It'll bring the economy down. And you saw what happened with this when that happened, right? And how the economy shattered. You don't want that on your plate again, do you, Don? No, you don't want that on your plate. So you need to try to shove that elephant under the rug. That elephant being Epstein, Maxwell, and the intelligence agencies. And it'll make your base mad, but they'll get over it. I don't think so. The men in dark suits probably told him that, look, if you don't do this, there are other butlers in your future and your family's futures. That's how these psychopaths work. Because remember, it was the intelligence agencies that ultimately were going to be hung out to dry on the facts getting out about the trafficking operations because they have been integrally involved for decades. And I actually think that it was all of the above. A, B, and C. 1, 2, and 3. That there were probably friends, big donors, maybe even some tangential family members or family members in that list, in documentation of problems. Because remember, it was not just files, it was videotapes. And I also believe he was told that it would bring the whole country down if the information got out, the totality of the information. And I also believe he was physically threatened, as was his family. And when he was confronted, I believe, with those 3 points, those 3 scenarios, him being a deal maker said, okay, I'll try, operative word try, to shove this under the rug. And I'll realize I'm going to take a hit for this, but what you're going to do is you, as part of this deal, as I try to shove this under the rug. And I believe he fully knew he wouldn't be able to. But I'll try. But here's what you're going to do. You are going to release the truth, the documents, and we can have Tulsi do it, because she has access to all of this, about the fake Russian collusion hoax, about the fake impeachments, about the fake 2020 November election event, about the illegal spying on me and my supporters, about Hillary's emails. It all comes out. That's the deal. I think that is a completely understandable scenario. The Untouchables still believe they're untouchable. I don't think that's the case. And the reason I believe that's not the case is because as the truth comes out on all these other issues, the fake Russian collusion hoax, the fake 2020 November event, the Hillary's emails, the illegal surveillance, that will be the straw that breaks the camel's back. And I believe that what will happen is that it will break the back of the camel to such a degree that the information on the human trafficking, not just Epstein or Maxwell, but across the board, and the involvement of intelligence agencies from around the world will be released. But the only way that happens is for you and me not to be mute, not to be silent, but for us to educate as many people as possible so they are in the loop. Please use this video as a means of helping network with them. And then getting on the phone and calling the White House, your governor's office, your member in the House in Washington, and your 2 senators, your senators in your state, your members of the House in your state, your local political whatever they are. And you let them know you know what's going on. And you want to know what they're doing, unearthing the most heinous crime imaginable. The abuse, the exploitation, and the trafficking of human beings, and in particular, children. And you tell them, if you don't do something about this, you then become complicit in this crime. And you will be held accountable, where we will either en masse recall you, or what we will do is we will find a primary opponent who will defeat you in the next election. You watch how that moves them. But the key is not remaining mute, not remaining silent, not saying, well, I disagree with the president on this, but I don't want to criticize him. No. Because the one thing he does to kind of get around this blockade around him, he goes down to the switchboard. He finds out how many people are calling. What are they calling about? What are they saying? The single most effective way to negate the blockage that Susie Wiles is putting around him and the mis and disinformation and garbage that Howard Lutnick and a little bit John Ratcliffe, director of the CIA, is putting in his ear every day. That's how we can make a difference for those children. Because ultimately, nobody is untouchable. Nobody. I thank you for joining me today. Until next time, Dave Janis signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time today.